Good morning, everyone. This is Chris Goropati from Cambrian Lab. With me is my colleague, Hiren Shah. And today's session, we are going to be covering master data management and how we make it very, very simple for SAP solutions and SAP customers. Our session includes a few agenda items today. We wanted to introduce ourselves a little bit. Very quickly highlight, some of the changes that we have been observing, especially in relation to master data management and related business processes. We also want to showcase some typical master data scenarios that business teams actually use to work collaboratively. We will spend some time, actually most of the time, doing the demo of the solution of how we address master data management with respect to SAP solutions and in general. We'll also spend some time on the real scenarios from actual customers. How do they handle master data and how effective that is. We will leave about 10 to 15 minutes for questions and answers. We want to, leave as much time as possible so that we can answer, your questions properly. And, we can also later on, if people are interested in a test drive of ZFlow, it is free. Test drives are free. We can have a discussion on how to do it. As far as questions and answers are concerned, we are going to answer all the questions towards the end of the session after the demo. However, it is very likely that you will have questions as we are showcasing the solution or discussing certain scenarios. Please go ahead and type in the question in the webinar's Q&A tab. If you look at your Zoom bar, there will be the fourth from the left is Q&A. If you can type in your question, we will keep track of the question and answer it during the Q&A session. The one advantage with having the Q&A, typing your question in the Q&A tab would be these questions can then be distributed to everyone who is registered or joining the session. Okay, so with that, a little bit about Cambrian Lab. We are a California-based company with teams in a few other US locations. We are primarily practitioners that also have deep expertise in some of the underlying technology, supply chain, ERP, and finance. So we come with that mindset of, what do practitioners face, some of the challenges. And that really informs what we do. And today we're going to showcase our workflow management solution. It is designed for supply chain workflows, but does an extremely good job with master data management processes. A little bit about me and Hiren. We are, as I told you, come from the industry, with deep expertise in, actually both of us worked at SAP for a while. So we know the core ERP and related supply chain solutions very well. One reason or another, we ended up at Michigan Tech. That's where we did our engineering. So that's a common thread. So today we'll cover a lot of scenarios based on our experience, direct experience, as well as our vision for how things should be. I think I'll be speaking to the choir if I were to say good master data is critical for operational excellence. It's something that while it is said and hope to practice, it is hard to do. And the reason being, there are several root causes. Some of them, are bigger than the others. And what we have noticed is either any of the root causes here or the combination thereof can cause quite a bit of, challenges for effective master data management for most organizations. And of course, not having good master data obviously impacts a lot of core business processes, from product launches to supply chain to, sales, CRM, and e-commerce. We've seen across the board these types of issues, and it is serious enough that some companies should consider master data as management as one of the, if not the top 3, should be in the top 5 in terms of trying to solve it and make it very efficient and effective. Now, the challenges stem from the fact that we believe that master data management was seen through the lens of, hey, it's all data, right? We somehow get the correct data into the correct places and it'll be done. It is hard to do because, if you take it only data perspective, you lose a lot of the business aspects, how collaborative master data management should be. And if you look at what is traditionally done, there's a lot of, work, ad hoc work that happens. And somehow people get the master data information especially since we are talking today about SAP, there are lots of different solutions available, which are, in our opinion, still very data-centric and tend to be very ad hoc. Even if it were to be MDG or MDM, or a lot of people we have seen use LMSW as a tool to handle master data. These are very data-centric tools. We see master data management primarily as a business activity that involves the right people, providing the right information, and supporting various SAP solutions in a very seamless and effective manner, right? So this is our vision, and today we'll showcase how you can achieve that, as part using ZFlow. And another thing that we've seen also is that because the way things are organized, especially the front end of master data management, today there is usually very little business stakeholder involvement, and if it were to be there, it would be very ad hoc, lots of emailing and everything, and it takes a lot of time, and some cases resources as well. Both of them are not very good. The way we are approaching master data management is, this has to be connected tightly to business processes, master data management. And, and there are quite a few business processes, if you look at all the bottom boxes here, extensively dependent upon master data management. So that's one facet to look at. The second thing that we are also looking at is, how do you get business stakeholders directly involved in master data management? Right? They should be the ones that initiate it or provide correct information or do some evaluations. And when you're doing some evaluations of master data, it should be with an eye towards business improvement, right? What are my if I'm doing material masters, what's the key inventory level, right? What is some of the supplier risk involved when we are trying to bring new suppliers? Do we have enough master data to effectively support e-commerce channels, readiness issues? Those are the types of things to worry about when you're working with master data, not, hey, do I have the correct field? Right? So that's a perspective to take on when you're working with master data. That's our goal. And if you look at the business processes that are, in all of these different functional areas we talked about, they talk completely differently from today how master data is dealt with, right? Master data, people think of, hey, do we have all the material masters? That is not how business actually works. Business is thinking mostly in terms of parts, materials. We have to get new suppliers. We have to see what their costing is. Is our order to cash systems and manufacturer systems cost price synchronizations? That's their language. Now, if we can support this type of business process with the language while supporting core master data needs of SAP solutions, that would be the ideal scenario, right? And that's what we'll see today, because this is how we actually address master data management. And we do that with ZFlow. One of the core uses of ZFlow is for master data management. It is also used extensively for new product introduction and supply chain. And that's actually what is helping us do and support master data management properly. The fact that ZFlow is also used very extensively for those core business related scenarios. So there are many things that come together, and that's the reason why we call it Swiss Army knife. If we were to look at, try to see what is the equivalent, you probably have to put together 3 or 4 different solutions to do what ZFlow does. But that is the nature of the type of work we do, and as a result, everything comes as a packaged, or all the key pieces are in place. Some of the key, especially with respect to master data management, we've added a number of capabilities that I think make master data management fairly simple. And it is also accessible for a lot of key stakeholders, from business process, business teams, from purchasing, or sales and distribution and other areas, to actually process owners and analysts that can actually use ZFlow to really design what they need to do. And it makes it very, very accessible. And the other thing that we do is, we really are in the business of supporting these types of core business functions. When we think of master data, we are thinking in terms of, how do we support NPI? How do we support e-commerce? How do we support supply chain development? So that's our viewpoint with ZFlow. And there are, especially for SAP customers, because we've done significant amount of work there for one reason or another. There are quite a few almost out of the box domains and workflows that can be used to support various fine types of master data workflows. Okay. And we also provide a inbuilt integration engine that you can use to connect to any systems. Since we deal a lot with product NPI and supply chain, some of the core systems are already directly integrated. SAP is one we support as a, what you would call first class solution, in the sense that we directly have integration into all the NetWeaver based systems with key core access to all the standard BAPIs, etc. So it's one place where we've, the integration is more or less out of the box and ready to go. So what I will do right now is, kind of take you through a demo scenario. There are multiple scenarios here. What I do want to cover is the variety of master data workflows that companies use, organizations use to support, either global master data workflows or regional master data workflows, or different variations, different business functions. So you have to really view it from that perspective. I will spend some time with materials master data management, because that is I would say, the 60 to 80% challenge for most SAP customers. And then we'll cover a little bit upon suppliers and new customers. It is these two are also fairly central objects, as far as SAP is concerned, right? If you're in sales and distribution, or, purchasing, those are key things. But they are still smaller compared to materials management. Towards the end, we'll highlight some of the core capabilities around workflow management, integration, some of the insights that you actually get, as your workflows are going through ZFlow, etc. Okay. So with that, what I will do is bring the application to the foreground. So one of the things that you will see here is, the variety of master data workflows that are common. When you're working with core master data objects in SAP. So if you notice, there's extend material master, multiple material masters, NPI to production transfer, new part request. Now we're going to start off with some simple ones and then increase the complexity of the types of things that people do, like pricing masters, info records, etc., costing. Right, so those are the types of just workflows. Just to give you another scenario, actually, in terms of master data with respect to other functions like product engineering, component engineering, look entirely different, right? New part manufacturer requests and release notices, evaluation parts, right? All of these in one fashion or another are dealing with master data, materials master data or supplier master data. And if you go to the classical materials management or customer types of workflows, you can have 5, 6, 7, 10 different types of workflows just handling different types of materials, material groups, and regions. So it is not uncommon for us to really, or our customers to design many workflows to handle master data processes. Some of them are dealing with master data object directly, or sometimes, if you're just dealing with pricing, it is just that one piece of information that you may work with. Okay. So what we are going to now do is start with the simplest one, right? Hey, it is pretty common, whether it is in these types of requests are coming from sales or design engineering or MRO, they want to bring in a new part, right? So you're going to start off with a new part request. So if you notice, there are a number of boxes here. Some of them are workflows. Some of them are objects in themselves. Some of them are even an analysis, right? Risk assessments. So all of these combined together to a large extent form the whole master data management, you can call framework, right? So today we're going to first start with a small request. This is how people encounter, workflows related to master data management. Let's say I'm in design and engineering. I need to create a new board, right? I'm still in the design phase. However, I need to first quickly get a part number for that, right? These are internally, I'm going to generate the part number here. So I'm going to just use an external part number. And I'll quickly take you through a couple of other scenarios, how things can happen. Here in this case, I'm just going to call it KG board. We'll use tomorrow's days. 0917 01 board for Z-Phone X SOS main processor. Okay, and if you notice, there are some required fields before we move forward, and those are already marked here, saying, hey, you need to especially give these two as required before we can move forward. I'm going to do that. Say CE mark, not required, and ECCN is codes are EAR99, right? And the source origin is going to be the US. So as far as design engineer is concerned, this is all they need to worry about, right? Everything underneath is embedded under these request type boards, etc. The other thing that you will also see is, we make everything cross-functional. That means in this workflow, there are these roles that are involved: component engineer, engineering manager, export compliance, and product engineering. we've actually, to make sure that things start off properly, we've already assigned certain users within the organization that will play the role of the roles that we have designed for this. And importantly, we also have, this is the workflow that we'll follow. One is, hey, the engineering teams are asking for a part. Before we go ahead and start to do all of that, we're going to have CCB, engineering manager, export compliance is okay with it. And then we'll go ahead and create this new material in SAP. This has, if you were to ask an engineer to come and do this in SAP, they'll be very perplexed, right? So we want to make these types of requests very, very simple. So here I'm going to go ahead and request. I'm going to submit it. This is for test. If you notice, it is actually already gone to CCB approval, right? And these are the actors for CCB approval. I will also actually get an email. So I just got an email since I'm the component engineer who is the next actor for this workflow, it is coming and saying, hey, why don't you have an activity assigned, NPR 25. You need to click here and then go and finish your work. So since we are making it very, very collaborative so that the correct people are getting involved at the right time. So I'm going to log in as design engineer now, just to show you how they will see that. And this is only supported for design engineer. So design engineer, they'll see this, my activities, that list is already there and saying, hey, CCB approval, you need to do this. And they can also delegate this if they want to. When I come here, it's, it is still, some of this is still editable, right? Because, as a CCB person, you may make some changes here. You might, add some saying, hey, yes, create an SAP. I change it. And as a design engineer, I'm approving this request. So if you notice, performers are component engineer and design engineer. Only one of them needs to approve it, so that for it to move forward. So here I'm going to approve this. Okay. And because only one needs to do it, the design engineer said, okay, it moved to the engineering manager review. So let me come back as admin and quickly take you through a couple more steps. Okay, so we are at NPR 005. Here, since I'm an admin, I'm not a performer. So current performer is actually engineering manager. You can, as an admin, I have this capability to go ahead and complete these activities. In the interest of time, I'm going to complete these for ENGGR admin complete. I'll do the same for export compliance. And now the system actually, as part of the next 2 steps of workflows, it actually goes and connects to SAP and creates the material directly. So if I come back and look at this workflow, the material KG board 97 has been created or extended in SAP, right? And the summary of the process, the whole process report has been sent to the people. So now if I go into SAP, I have SAP in the screen here. So I'm just MM03, KGBRD. I just created the 917. It should be picking it up here. So it just created the basic view. Normally, when we've seen that a lot of times, until manufacturing, the MRP and purchasing and sales and costing, accounting are done, usually you just create the the basic views and keep the material ready for extensions and enhancement of information. Okay, so that's one of the simplest flows that we've seen, pretty common. Now, the same one, if I notice here, sometimes you may have to generate part numbers yourself, right? Depending upon how you set it up. For example, if I'm looking at processors, commodity code processors, look at this part number. This is actually generated by the system here. There's some logic built into how it should be done, etc. But either you can assign part numbers manually, or you can generate part numbers within the system itself. There is actually another variation of that, which is also pretty common, that where you actually get the material number from the system. Okay, so this is a case where if I were to look at it, it says get material number for RH type. This is where SAP actually assigns the internal material number range. So that, when we are going through this workflow, we first get that material number and continue on to add additional details about this material. Okay, so all of these variations are real and can be used. It is not one size fits all, and depending upon how your company is organized, how different divisions work, you may have to support these types of workflows. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why you may have many workflows supporting a lot of these types of scenarios. Similarly, you can actually create multiple materials at the same time, right? With a lot more information. Some of this actually goes into either dimensional information or sales or plant data, purchasing groups. And here, obviously, you can actually build up this material in stages. First you create a basic view, and then once you have costing, pricing, you go add those views, and that's how things come together. So this is a scenario where multiple materials are created in one shot. There are still more scenarios where you can actually go ahead and extend single materials, right? So if I were to look at this material, you can do that in stages again. So I'll quickly take you through some of that. This is also a very popular workflow, extend material masters. It happens pretty commonly, where you are actually picking an existing material, right? And now continuing on with for a specific plant or a specific sales organization, that you can go ahead and build it, right? So first you pick the existing material, submit it. We've selected the material to extend already, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So now MRP information is this thing, right? So this is actually given to the site planner so that they can go ahead and add in just the MRP content, right? There's no point asking them to fill through them a really large screen and confuse everything. So just the right amount of information that is needed to so that they can do their job. So here it is broken down into MRP, purchasing, costing, etc. as steps, because they build on top of each other. There are times where you can do all of these things parallelly, right? All of these are set aside as a parallel step, and I will show you one or two examples of how parallel steps work, so that they can do simultaneously and compress the time frame it takes to do extensions. So once all of this information, different views information is all set up, the material is extended in SAP, right? So you have a very controlled way of managing all of these different changes. I think the goal for us is to really make it smooth, seamless, as well as faster. because master data, the faster you can handle master data, the better. Just to give you the variety of different things that you can also do. This is one of the scenarios where this is a very intricate one. This is a scenario where this company has to move a material status from pre-production to production, NPI stage to production. That means, for those specific materials, they have to go through lots of checks and balances. For example, here are 4 materials that they need to move from NPI phase to production phase. And the workflow is very long. So they do a number of things, where the current PO price, there are lots of verifications, checks with the suppliers and buyers. And towards the end, they actually change, the buyer, who the new buyer is. That is one piece of information. Okay. And they also, if you look at this workflow, they also change if there are any open POs, change the storage location, because now it needs to come into a production storage location, all going forward, right? Because the material status has changed. That's the workflow that has been designed to accommodate. Traditionally, these are not the types of workflows that master data solutions have tackled, right? This is completely, off the field type of workflow. But ZFlow, it can be used to do these small pieces of master data updates that happen throughout, the product lifecycle or even commercial lifecycle. So here, if you look at each of these materials, there's quite a bit of information, right? There is the purchase info record, all consolidated, and then we are only changing certain pieces of information, right? These, if you ask your business teams, they have tens of these types of workflows that tackle or look at key pieces of master data or change small pieces of master data. And there is no solution that we know of today that can effectively support these types of scenarios. And it's a business critical type of situation, right? So these are the types of things that you can do. And then before I move on from materials, I'll also talk about, this is a very, very popular workflow, pricing changes. This happens a lot, where, for a certain material, you're doing specific key combinations. So here, if I were to, make pricing changes, right? So if you look at, let's make, so the types of, so either single materials or multiple materials, you're constantly changing pricing. We also provide a way to use imports, exports, import from Excel, other techniques, so that all of this becomes easier. But even just this, finance is going to review some pricing changes, and then you go update the pricing condition tables in SAP, right? So those are, kind of what you can call them to be extended, material master or master data workflows that are very, very common from what we have seen. So here is, if you look at that workflow, it actually goes and updates the correct condition record and supporting table underneath it. So with ZFlow, you can really split your master data into workflows into exactly what the business needs and involve the right people at the right time. So that's another thing that we've done. There are a couple of other very popular areas. One is new supplier request. So in the interest of time, I'll show you exactly how some of the current ones that have already been completed. So new suppliers, you're constantly onboarding new suppliers, and a lot of times there's also a related workflow of, hey, you need to extend the supplier, remove blocks on suppliers, remove blocks on customers. All of those things need to be supported as part of workflows. So if you look at this workflow, it's a little bit easier. So someone requests supplier. Requests for suppliers can come from any source, any people, right? Whether it's services or capital equipment to parts suppliers, all of them need to be onboarded in a proper fashion. So you can design your workflow to support such a process. That may include lots of purchasing reviews. People may also even do some risk assessments. Finance has interest in making sure that they are, properly allocated and set up, right? And once it's done, you create the vendor in SAP. Same thing, right? Not, once we are all done, we actually go ahead and get the vendor created in SAP. And that, in this scenario, the vendor is notified of the vendor number, and in some cases even continues on to RFP documents and so on. But most of the time, people use this workflow to set up suppliers. And all the information that SAP needs is already in here. But the thing is, it also includes information that business uses to do proper risk assessment and so on, right? So how do you, as master data needs are evolving, you need to support these types of scenarios, not just for, hey, I can only do SAP and nothing else. You need to support the needs of other stakeholders that play a key role in supplier risk assessments, etc. So we provide some tools, underlying tools, so that people can do risk assessment. This is again based on our experience in supply chain development, right? So there are actually risk ratings that are given out based, and then we also look at different types of risk categories and provide some basis for understanding, what type of risks are common for specific suppliers. So your lots of master data needs are evolving in such a fashion, right? So, and you need to be able to support, both the core needs of SAP as well as the needs of the business within the same workflow. It doesn't have to be separate. Okay, and finally, I'm going to look at a new customer. This is also a pretty common one. And then I will actually ask Hiren to quickly take you through, while you're looking at a lot of these workflows as user initiated, right? People are coming here and starting the workflows. You can also start these workflows from other systems. Today, we're going to, once I'm done with it, Hiren will showcase how these types of workflows can be started from Salesforce, right? Salesforce instantiating ZFlow workflow as part of the overall CRM process. So here, in the case of customer, so if we look at, then, this is a pretty common workflow, right? Where, you've do the due diligence, you have the right people involved, from customer service to sales associate. Salespeople actually start new customers, or customer service start new customer requests, right? From, if they have a prospect, they want to make it into a real customer from a financial and relationship perspective, they would be using this workflow. So as you can see, it includes a lot of key information that SAP needs, as well as some additional, from a logistics related, so that shipments can be done, all the key things, and then, the partner functions that are needed. So this workflow actually does a lot. Some of this is just not even available in core SAP and how it should be done. So we've added some additional functions within SAP to make this all possible, so that it can be done one shot or in stages, where customers are created, blocks are removed, and then, tax indicators to partner functions, those are all created as part of the customer creation. Okay, so with that, what I'll do is give Hiren a chance to showcase how things can be instantiated from other solutions. It is very common for CRM systems to be connected to this new customer, or in some cases, even new supplier, to ZFlow. So Hiren?
Yes, I'll share my screen. You can hear me okay, Chris?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. So as Chris mentioned, we interoperate seamlessly with multiple systems, Salesforce, SAP, etc. And there's no need for middleware. So here is an example of an opportunity in Salesforce, but it could be any CRM system. And as part of this opportunity, as Chris mentioned, there's a variety of collaborative processes that you may need to engage in. And here are some examples. You may need to onboard a customer because you are now working on this opportunity with Facebook. And now, since the opportunity is moving forward, you want to trigger the onboarding process right from here. Or you might, in order to service this opportunity, you need to interact with a vendor, get some information so that you can service this opportunity properly. So you can initiate a vendor request. So for example, if I click on that, it seamlessly brings you over into ZFlow, launches the correct process, such as new supplier request. It maintains the context, saying that this is the opportunity in Salesforce that you have spawned this process from. And once this process is complete, and we can take a look at this process, there are these standard steps that we go through. All of the steps, as Chris mentioned, are customizable by the business user. Amongst other things, it will also create a vendor in SAP. And once this process is completed, it will pull that information back into Salesforce, and it would update vendor number from SAP right here. So this information would already appear over here. Another example of collaborating from Salesforce is if you were to move this process forward, you have now initiated a vendor request, you have created a new vendor, and now you are in the quoting phase for the same customer. And now you need to collaborate with this vendor. You already created this vendor, but you need to collaborate with this vendor, for example, to get an estimated delivery date for this quotation that you'd like to send to your customer. So now you could spawn another ZFlow process that will help you collaborate with this vendor. But in this case, since you have initiated it from the code, it maintains the reference to the code. And if we were to actually start this process, what you'll see is it will live in real time, pull the correct information from Salesforce, put it over here so that you can then share it with your vendor. So it knows that if you would like to share, you may or may not want to share the name of the customer, but it has pulled all of the information over here, and it has a workflow that allows you to now collaborate with your vendor. So this is an example of how you can initiate processes from your CRM system, be it Salesforce or any other, and instantiate ZFlow processes, which in turn would interact with another backend system such as SAP. Chris?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Hiren. Yeah, I've seen a lot of, I've kind of browsed through the questions. We'll quickly get to all of those. Before I go into that part, let me cover a couple of things. One is integration. Can you see my screen again, Hiren?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, so ZFlow comes, the integration framework and engine is inbuilt into ZFlow. As you could see that we uniquely intersperse people activities with integration activities fairly seamlessly. You don't have to deal with it as a separate thing, right? You add an integration step as part of your workflows and you continue on. So we provide integration, various integration adapters. One of the main ones, obviously today the topic is SAP, right? You can connect ZFlow to multiple SAP systems. ZFlow can connect to as many SAP systems as you want. We do use JCO, so JCO is a little bit different from REST APIs because it's almost like a library. So it has direct access to SAP as if it's just another service user or a regular user. So anything that a SAP GUI has access to in authorizations, it's the same thing ZFlow is following because we are using JCO, Java Connector. In terms of BAPIs, I know there were a couple of questions around BAPIs. Pretty much all of the moment you use JCO, that means you directly are using BAPIs as the core integration mechanism. And it doesn't have to be just standard BAPIs. If you have developed custom BAPIs and you do have to remote enable them, then they are accessible for these workflows, both bi-directional, right? We can use the BAPIs to create data, or we can use standard BAPIs to get information. So that's how actually we got, the complicated material workflow where I was showing we got all the, not only material information, but open POs against a specific material. We were using standard BAPIs. And it's very, very, very simple to use those. You just map the workflow objects to different BAPI parameters or tables, structures, and you're done, right? Whether it is import, input, or output, it works seamlessly. And you use this integration object as an activity, as part of an integration activity in the workflow. So workflows are also fairly easy to design and manage. A lot of times these workflows are designed and managed by business analysts themselves. There is no need for programming at all. So here is a workflow which has these specific roles that we've designed. You can design these roles to, very, very, fine-grained manner, what they can do as part of this workflow. You can assign members right from the outset, or you can decide to add these, who the correct actors are, or make a determination once the workflow is instantiated. I know there were a couple of questions on what is the, different countries, regions, they have different needs around, or organizational structures. Those are all supported here as part of the allocation of activities, workflow activities. And when the workflow is done, you can just go ahead and, so these are fairly easy to set up, these workflow activities. We provide a fairly rich set of workflow activities and rules, workflow rules. So here is a good situation where VP of supply chain approval is needed only if supplier stability risk is 4 or 5, right? Let's say if I'm interested in adding an SVP supply chain approval step here, I can just go ahead and create an approval activity. So these are the different types of activities. There's a rich library of these activities that you can use. Special function is where you can actually integrate objects. So here, if I were to go ahead and do an approval, we don't have the role yet, but we'll come back and do it. And we just want any performer to do this. So it automatically added after VP of supply chain approval, SVP of approval. We don't have the role yet, so I'm going to go ahead and add that role. And you can also set up so that, whether the role can see certain fields or not, whether can they update. So it gives you a lot of control over what can be done. Right. So now I'm added as VP of supply chain. Let me go ahead and assign that to SVP of supply chain. So that's it, done, right? You've made like a live change to the workflow. And these are the types of things that your business analysts can manage, right? Most of our core workflows, all of these different workflows have typically this whole process administrators role. So they can manage this and control actual running workflows where needed. Okay, so very, very simple to set it up. In addition, we do, once there are enough workflows, we do keep track of lots of cycle times. For example, at any given time, now, first, number one, there is a complete audit log of everything that is happening in the workflow. Okay, and even messages coming back from other systems or messages we are sending to other systems. The next thing is, we also keep track of timelines, right? How much of these workflows are, what time is it taking? Right? Obviously, any integration activities happen immediately, but there are times when, some activities are getting stuck with people, right? People are not doing it, or there's some issue there, right? So you can find out, what are the bottleneck activities after a certain number of workflows go through, kind of get an average values here and start to see where improvements should be done. So that's another very core aspect of it that really helps. The other thing that we wanted to cover is, there are some nifty features. Some of it, you can use if you think it makes sense. For example, because we deal with a lot of supplier parts and other data, we do provide some over the database, some validations just to make sure that there are some duplicates, etc., are not happening. We have a general purpose search engine that is looking at names and descriptions to make sure that things are at least you have an option to find out. Of course, our real goal is to make sure that it doesn't happen, right? So if I look at this supplier profile here, sometimes people use this, when they're initially getting started during consolidations, etc. So here, they're like missing field payment terms is missing for a lot of these suppliers. So this is based upon the metadata models that you can design yourself, but we also provide a lot of the object models that are needed to not only support workflows, but support some of the validations that are happening. So with that, what I will do is look at the questions. I think I'm gonna go from last in, first out. Can you delegate approvals? Yes. So everything, all of these activities come with delegation possibility. Two types of delegation. You can manually delegate to somebody, or when users go on vacations, they can also delegate, put some delegation dates, etc., and who the delegate should be. Okay, so it's a pretty fundamental tool to do that. Is there a way to build business rules for intelligent fields? Yes, we do provide quite a bit of direct logic that you can write for field validations and checks and balances. So a good example here is, let's say, extend material. There are times when you have to check if the material is typed. So let me show you how it is defined here. So here, there are a lot of rules that kind of shows if package type is this. So all of these rules are set up so that they can, conditions are met, etc. Right? So when people are filling the forms, it throws all the validations, etc. directly when people are entering data. So a good example here is special procurement. Okay, so if procurement type is F, special procurement type needs to be so on and so forth, right? So these are functions that people can write, and it helps the users when they are working with master data. So there are a few more questions. Business rules can be done for fields. Business rules can be done for the workflow activities themselves. So if you look at the new supply request, like I was showing, this VP of supply chain, this only is real when supplier stability risk. So all of the objects that are going through the workflows and their data models are available for writing these business rules.
Chris, there's a question on document repository, if you'd like to show that.
Yeah, so let's to give you this thing. Any of these workflows can handle documents. So for example, it's not uncommon to say, hey, if I were to go to new supplier request and let me start so let me pick a new supplier request and then show you how people would add documents to it. So if I go ahead and provide this, so you can just go ahead and attach documents. So pretty common to have W9 and banking info sent. We also have a banking validation checks that are connected to IBAN and other systems. So here I'm going to add the W9, open, attach. So now that attachment is there at the bottom, right? So you can open it. Each workflow itself comes with its own data. So W9 is, since we handle a lot of other material, other structured objects, you can also have its own document repository. So it's a multiple files, create your own folder structure and so on. So it's fairly rich in terms of how it handles documents. We do handle a lot of documents, especially related to materials. So our materials also is supported by what we call concept of parts where needed. Some of our, I would say, the high-tech customers use a lot of this concept where there is a full-fledged BOM model, bill of material model, and it actually has a lot of checks and balances, supply chain actions. So this actually handles quite a bit of document-related information. It also looks at a lot of supply chain checks. As a matter of fact, it's a very common to run what we call BOM checks, just to make sure that these parts are available and SAP, it's all there in SAP properly or not, so that BOMs can be created. Before we go, just to showcase some of the real world scenarios. This is a new customer. One of our customers streamlined the new customer workflow. What used to take, there were a lot of people involved in that. They're still involved, but what used to take 15 to 20 days now is done in 3 to 4, mostly because some activities are waiting. Obviously, there was a question around if the activities are waiting, do they get notifications if the wait is too long? Yes. Now we send out reminders, not only to the people, but sometimes to the higher ups as well, saying, hey, this is stuck, this activity, do something about it. So extending a material can also be fairly complicated. These are product releases, which are fairly intricate because there are lots of BOMs. BOMs are created in SAP, sometimes updated. Those are the ones that use this model here. Components, especially if you're in high tech, you have to deal a lot with components, and they're approved vendors and approved manufacturers. And those have some representations in SAP, which is not accessible for standard master data tools. So we have support for that. And there are these are very custom flows. If you have multiple systems, there's always this synchronization issues of different types of information. So we also do a very, very good job of supporting those scenarios. So with that, I want to stop, and I think there are a lot of benefits. With the feedback that we get from SAP customers has been supremely positive, to say the truth, because these are the types of scenarios that they've struggled with, how to effectively support. But we do have an option for you to test drive ZFlow. We want to make sure that it actually works for you before you say, hey, we should do something about it. We can set it up and showcase some of the scenarios that you have. If you are interested in a test drive, once you get the recordings and the material via email, please feel free to send us a note saying, hey, we want to do a test drive of ZFlow. We will support it. We support tens of these test drives at any given time. No problem, as many as possible. And we will make sure that it works. Okay, with that, we are at the time limit today for the webinar. Thank you again for joining the session today. We really appreciate it. We will send you the presentation and the recording as soon as they are available. Thank you very much.